Have you ever felt like humanity is just stuck on a loop? Like we're making the exact same missteps generation after generation while time just kind of sits back and watches? Well, today we're looking at a text that examines exactly that phenomenon. It's called History Thinks Things Through.
Welcome to today's explainer. Okay, let's dive into this profoundly reflective text. We're going to unpack a really brilliant analysis of the cyclical nature of political instability. We'll be looking at how power, rebellion, and history itself interact in this never-ending dance. But before we break down the themes, let's take a second to look at the brilliant mind behind the text, Oluyomi Oladevid. She is a Nigerian thinker, a policy influencer, and a deeply faith-driven writer. She actually notes that she loves people and is incredibly concerned about global development and transformation. And what's really foundational here is her faith. She calls it the wheel within her wheels. And that faith is absolutely her guiding force, driving her passion to generate real solutions and influence strategic policy. So, let's move right into theme 1, the roots of discontent.
You might be wondering what actually causes a society to reach a breaking point where the normal rule of law is just totally abandoned. Well, she maps out the raw materials for political upheaval quite neutrally. We're talking about discontent, conflict, competing interests, rebellion, blatant injustice, and tyranny. It's almost never just one single issue. Each of these acts as a distinct catalyst. She's laying out a pretty stark reality here. When the social fabric tears in these specific ways across all sorts of different scenarios, upheaval is the almost inevitable result. And she points out a very specific trigger that we see happen time and time again in global politics. Just look at this powerful line from her text. Opportunist raises term limit, and arrogance festers. She keenly observes how the manipulation of established political rules breeds this really dangerous arrogance among leadership. It's a remarkably precise diagnosis of how political overreach basically sets the stage for the exact unrest we were just talking about.
Which brings us to theme 2, history's repeating cycle. And this brilliantly illustrates the inescapable cause and effect loop that happens once that initial unrest is triggered. She breaks it down into 4 devastating steps. First, it starts with discontent and poverty taking their toll on a society. Step 2 is the coup or rebellion itself, which is born right out of that friction. Then we hit step 3. The new victors take over. Plundering gets underway and they entrench this sense of absolute impunity, which unfortunately leads directly to step 4. Development wanes, the country essentially slides backward, perfectly setting the stage for step 1 to begin all over again. Now, throughout this cycle, she introduces history not just as a passive timeline, but as an active, looming observer. She uses this powerful, rhythmic repetition to really drive the point home. History peaks, it watches the discontent. History instructs, it offers lessons from the past that frankly go ignored. History ticks, time just keeps moving forward relentlessly, even as factions fight for temporary control. The pacing of her words here really emphasizes history as this constant, watchful presence. And she doesn't stop there. As the cycle worsens, history's role actually intensifies. History chronicles, meticulously documenting every human error and violent rebellion. History judges, when injustice and suffering continue while the political elite throw feasts. And history reveals, when tyranny tries to hide by simply changing its attire, like a dictatorship trying to look like a democracy. She portrays history as this absolutely undeniable force that will ultimately bring every hidden agenda right out into the light. But then, we hit this incredibly heavy realization in her text. History travels. History repeats. Without a conscious break in the pattern, without some kind of fundamental intervention, history simply echoes the exact same mistakes. The actors might change, the locations might shift as history travels, but the core script of political instability, it remains tragically identical. In fact, globally, there have been literally hundreds of these cycles recorded over the last century alone. And that heavy truth leads us to theme 3, the toll on society. So the crucial point is, when history repeats these violent cycles, who actually pays the price? She impartially contrasts the 2 realities here. On one side, you have the perpetrators. For them, she writes, the state becomes family business and parties build dynasty. They operate with absolute impunity and reap all the rewards. But for the everyday citizens, poverty takes its toll and the citizens stand no chance. It's a pretty devastating look at how political upheavals rarely actually serve the people they claim to liberate. Instead, the suffering just continues. Finally, we transition to her ultimate proposed solution in theme 4, the path to peace. What is the actual path forward for the African continent?
and really for any society trapped in this loop. She delivers this incredibly definitive, powerful thesis statement. Africa needs peace to develop, not coups. It is such a clarifying distillation of everything she's built up to this point. She emphasizes her belief that you simply cannot engineer true development through force or instability. You cannot fight your way to prosperity. Peace isn't just a nice idea. It is the fundamental, non-negotiable prerequisite for progress.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is her final, uncompromising requirement for success. It goes even deeper. Africa needs truth to thrive, nothing less. She connects peace directly to truth, because you can't just stop the physical fighting, you have to stop the systemic deceit, the manipulated term limits, the plundering, the feigned political concern, all of it. Truth is the only foundation solid enough to actually break the cycle of history.
So we're left to ponder this incredible analysis. As we look at the global political landscape today, will history just continue to tick, travel, and repeat itself in an endless, predictable loop of discontent? Or can an uncompromising commitment to truth and peace finally break the cycle once and for all? It's a profoundly thought-provoking question she leaves us with, one that demands we stop just letting history happen and start actively shaping it. Thanks so much for joining us for this explainer. Keep questioning and keep learning.